Hey, what's up, guys? This is Audie from Sasha Nation, and today we're going to be talking about the flow of energy in an ecosystem. All right, so now that you're back from the intro, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so flow of energy in the ecosystem, but I'm just going to leave out the ecosystem part. All right, so now you're probably noticing that we're talking a lot about ecosystems and stuff, and I don't know, to me at least, this is the most boring part of biology in general. So I'm not gonna be my usual, happy self because I don't find this very interesting. But we have to learn it, so let's do it. Okay. It's interesting in some parts, but not that interesting to me. I don't know. Maybe to you. I don't know. But anyways, okay. So let's first start. Sorry. Something in my throat. Okay, so let's start out with the trophic levels. Trophic levels. Okay, so basically the energy flow. Okay, obviously, you probably a lot of this stuff you're gonna have learned in like seventh and eighth grade, depending on where you went. But most of it, yeah, you'll have learned in seventh and eighth grade. With the like predator-prey relationships, the niche, and and things like that. Flow of energy, like the plants are the producers, and then you have the primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary, quaternary, and then and then you have quaternary, things like that. Consumers, food webs, food chains, things like that. That's basically what we're going to talk about at this point. And then how much energy is passed on to the next level and things like that. All right, so obviously the first level would be the producer. Producer. All right, so the producers obviously like plants. Second would be the primary consumer. Okay, and then that would obviously, that could be like bugs and things like that. So bugs, we'll say bugs, and things like that. All right, so then third would be the tertiary. So like things that eat bugs, birds and stuff like that. Whatever eats bugs and other things that eat the plants and things like that. All right, so this would be like I don't know. I guess birds. Because an example would be like birds. All right, so fourth level would be the tertiary level. Oh, my bad. Not. I messed up. 1 second. Sorry, this isn't tertiary level. My bad. All right. I guess I got carried away there. But this would be the secondary level. My bad. Secondary. Okay, and that would be like birds and stuff like that. So, my bad, but I forgot to mention another thing. Obviously, these things eat the previous thing, so that's why it's going up like that. All right, so then fourth level you would have the tertiary level, tertiary level. Okay, and things that eat birds. So I don't know, like tertiary level animal, something that eats a bird, something that eats. I don't know. You could have like, yeah, you get the point. Like I guess like anything could eat a bird. Bigger bird. Let's just say that bigger birds. I don't know. Uh, Bigger bird, maybe like an eagle or something like that, eating a smaller bird. There's a small. I don't know, but you get the idea. You can come up with your own like way of remembering this and stuff like that, and like examples for each of these in your own life, I guess. So the last level. I mean, there may be more in some ecosystems, but for the most part, you'll only have five trophic levels. And so quaternary would be like like humans and stuff like that. That humans, lions, and things like that. That really aren't getting eaten by anything else, and they're really like the king of the lion is like the king of the jungle, things like that. Where like humans aren't being eaten by a lot of stuff, you know. Oh, you know what? I just thought of yeah, but like humans aren't going to get eaten by something. Like we're not afraid for our lives. We're not being hunted by a predator or something like that. So, usually we're in the highest trophic level in general. All right. So, some ecosystem processes. Yeah, I guess. All right. Processes or production. Now this video is pretty quick, but we'll see. All right, so production would be uh, like plants. Obviously, plants are gonna be using photosynthesis. Plants are going to be using photosynthesis to, create energy, harvesting the sun's light, things like that. Now, if you don't know what photosynthesis is, I hate to recommend this. That was like my first video, I believe. Yeah, it is. Um, but yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, man, it was horrible. That video was really bad. But anyways, it has a lot of good information in it. And I suggest watching it. I might come back in a year or so and remake all these videos when I have better equipment and stuff like that. But I do it what I have, I guess. All right. So the second level would be consumption. And so consumption, okay, so production obviously is the first trophic level, right? Consumption would be from like 2 second to almost, it could be fifth, but most likely fifth and stuff like that, it just depends on the animal, really. It could be second to fifth, but also the third level, the third process would be decomposition. Which could be from again second to fifth. So you could decompose like a plant or an animal or even a human, things like that. And so it just depends on hey, who's doing what or what, when is this happening, or what animal is being decomposed or organism is being decomposed is really what determines all of this. Now the important thing to take from this is that energy is recycled. So don't go around saying that we're breaking the law of conservation of energy, because we're not. We have to follow that law. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. So we're recycling energy by eating other things and getting that energy for ourselves, using some of that energy, and then passing it off to other things. And that's what most animals do. Is they receive energy from some point, they use the energy for themselves, and then they pass it on to whoever or whatever eats their remains in the future. All right, so um, some like factors that you need to keep, that an ecosystem needs to keep in check in order to be sustainable. So sustainable. Now I'm gonna mention the unstable things, the things that cause instability. So unstable. If okay, so it's unstable if. No, I don't know. I don't know if this is just me, but I usually find it easier to find like the flaws and stuff, and I guess that's just human nature if you think about it. Um, But just if you want to have a sustainable ecosystem, just think the opposite of these things that I'm going to mention here, and you'll be good to go. All right. So unstable if there are fewer component parts. Okay, so fewer component parts. All right. Lots of diversity. All right. You need to have a food web instead of a food chain. So food instead of a food Now, this is mainly because if you think about it, if you had a food web, you have multiple sources of, food and things like that. Whereas, if you only had one source of food, so for example, if all of the animals in an ecosystem, depended on, uh, uh, on the grass or something like that for their primary source of food, then if sorry, if something were to happen to the grass, like a drought or something like that, you wouldn't, the animals and the ecosystem would fail to, cease to exist because there's nothing to eat, yeah, and things like that. Now, I'm pretty sure this is wrong. So let me read it. Not a lot of diversity, so like a few amounts of diversity. So not no diversity. Yeah, no diversity. Because like if sorry, that's my mom in the background there. All right. But anyways, if you for example, if I don't know why I wrote that down in my paper, but I don't know. I guess I just think about it. All right. But anyways, no diversity. Like the problem with that is, again, like here in this instance, where if the only animal, the only producer of food, was grass, you wouldn't the ecosystem wouldn't be able to survive if for something were to happen to the grass, or like if you had like a drought or something like that. But now that I think of it, a drought would affect any plant, so I don't know if that makes sense. But let's say like the mouse, like that every animal in the ecosystem depended on the mouse, and the mouse population significantly dropped because of something, some reason, some bottleneck effect or something like that. The whole ecosystem would fall apart because there's nothing else to eat. There's no other animals in there. So if you have a lot of diversity and a food web instead of a food chain, you can, animals can switch off to different food sources that are still viable in the environment if the environment were to change. Okay, so the next one would be an inconsistent energy source. Okay. Oh, all right. Inconsistent energy source. Now, the now this goes back to again this one. If you think about it, it goes back to this. Um, if you had, if you only had a linear, food chain, for example, and the source of energy, the source of energy that you depended on was not very um, consistent, in producing, then you would die off. It wouldn't be good for you if if that source of energy, stopped producing it. So like think about it like if you went to a job, you had a job, but they only called you in when they needed you or something like that. And instead of you having a regular income, you would only have like income once in a while, which isn't good, and you wouldn't be good for living off of that. So that would be like an inconsistent energy source, and most animals can't survive off of that. So called cause for unstable factors in the or unstable ecosystem in general. All right. So lastly, this stuff should make sense to you. So I'm not going to really go over them a lot, but loss of producers is pretty obvious, I think. Um, essential abiotic factors, or keystone species. Oh, let me just erase that, honestly, species. So, or a keystone species. All right. So, a keystone species, if I remember correctly, is a species that is very detrimental to that ecosystem. And so like it's a species um, that a lot of animals depend on. And so again, this goes back to the lack of diversity problem. If a whole ecosystem is dependent on one species, obviously if it goes away, then it's not going to be good for that ecosystem. So you always want diversity in the ecosystem in general. All right. So let me pick a different color. Let's do this. All right. Um. So some like math, I guess, you know. So if I do like primary. Now I'm only gonna go over a little bit of the math. A lot of the math you guys will do in the if you're in AP Bio at least. If you're only in pre-AP or first year Bio, then you won't. But in AP Bio, you'll do a lab where you try to find the biomass of some pill bugs and stuff like that, or at least we did. And so you'll learn a lot of this math that I'm about to teach you in that lab report. So not really necessary here. But yeah, all right. So anyways, the gross. So gross productivity. So productivity meaning like they're creating stuff. So like they're creating, I don't know, like so if for example in a plant, which would be a prime example here because I'm talking about the primary consumer. Sorry, not a primary consumer. Producer. So like the first person that eats the plant that creates energy. So if you take that into account, gross productivity would be all the energy that it makes. So the complete amount of energy. So I use shorthand stuff like this. It's good to have some words like that where you could write it down quickly. It'll lessen your time and note taking. I would highly suggest you to develop almost like a vocabulary of terms where you could shorthand a lot of. I don't know. It's just something that helped me out, I guess. I don't know. All right. So this is the complete amount of energy that's produced. All right. So then next, what we have is the net energy, net productivity, right? Okay. So net productivity would be gross minus cell resp. Oh, let me erase that. My bad. Okay, so gross. Oh, erase that. Does not look good. All right, there we go. So gross minus cellular respiration. So now think about it. Gross. So net productivity, meaning like it's like the complete amount you've made minus the amount of you used. So that would be the net. So it'd be gross minus the amount used in cellular respiration or something like that. So a plant obviously needs to create energy and use it. So it needs to convert it to ATP and stuff like that. It needs to convert it to ATP. So what it's going to do is it's going to just it's going to use it for cellular respiration basically. All right. Let's see. What next? Biomass. All right. So the last thing I'm going to talk about this topic, biomass. So biomass is the measure of this in weight. And so when you do that lab, one thing that really confused a lot of people, including myself, is the biomass. The biomass, you have to assume that any energy that's not used for cellular respiration is stored in the plant itself. And so, if you haven't watched the photosynthesis video again, highly suggest watching that, even though it's probably the worst video I've ever made. It's my first one. No, what can I do? Okay, but anyways, any glucose that's not used for cellular respiration is going to be used for storage. Or it's going to either be stored in the roots, so it's going to be stored in the roots, or what's going to happen is it's going to be instead of going in the Calvin cycle, instead of going 6 rounds, you're going to go more than 6 rounds and create like cellulose or something like that can be used for the structure of the plant. And so that's mainly what's going to happen when it comes to biomass. And so all the biomass is the weight that the plant actually has. All right, so last thing that we're going to talk about. Ecological efficiency. Okay, so ecological efficiency is the is the amount of energy that's passed on to each trophic level. All right. So amount of energy Okay, so it's the amount of energy that's passed on to each trophic level, right? So let's see. Amount of energy passed on to each trophic level. Now, if I remember correctly, and I don't know, this number may have changed since I've learned it, but the amount of energy that's usually passed on is between 5 and 20%, depending on what level you're at. Now, it's going to start getting, obviously, it's going to start getting less and less and less. So, let's say, for instance, that a plant, now you'll usually see like a pyramid of sorts. Let me see. All right, so pyramid of sorts. Yeah, that's a horrible pyramid, but we're going to go with it, whatever. Okay, so this would be the producers. Okay, and then you have your first, your second, third, fourth, fifth, or whatever, And so each time, as you notice, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, right? As it goes up this way. The producers are the only organisms that tend to have 100% of the energy, because obviously some of the energy is going to be used. And if you remember back to here, the biomass. The biomass is the energy that's going to be passed on to the next trophic level. So if, let's say, for example, the plant only used 5% of the energy that it had, 95% of that energy will be passed on to the to the next one. Now, obviously, it's not going to be that big of a that big of a transfer of energy, but it'll be pretty small. So like only 20% of the energy will be passed on to the next trophic level. And so that's how energy is being transferred in the ecosystem through the trophic levels and stuff like that. All right, so that's about it for this video. All of you should really just know all of this. I was just spewing out facts. Basically, this video is not a very interesting, video, I guess. There's not a lot of discussion or something like that in this video, which I like to do. But, from a lot of videos, you can't really do that. Especially in biology, it's a lot of just facts and stuff like that you have to know, and you have to be able to apply to the actual world, which is really important, and I highly suggest doing that at any time you can. But yeah, okay. Anyways, that's about it. Just study all of this, and you should be good to go. A lot of this stuff you should have learned in like 7th and 8th grade, and so a lot of it should be some refresher, and then just adding on to the knowledge that you already have accumulated over the years. A lot of it should also make sense because it's talking about ecosystems and stuff, which is it makes sense because it involves humans and stuff like that. So I don't know, try to apply it, go to a forest or something like that and just look at nature or something. I don't know. Anyways, if you guys really like this type of stuff, the flow of energy, ecosystem, stuff like that, I highly suggest taking environmental science. It's a great course. And if you want to do that sort of thing, you should take it because that's basically what that course is. I haven't taken it. I'm not very interested in this. I wouldn't be able to last in that class. It would be really boring. Not a whole year. I couldn't do that. But I don't know. So whatever. It's up to you. And I guess I'll leave you guys at that. And see you guys on the next one. All right.